All right, welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live on this Thursday morning. Talked a little bit earlier about NVIDIA's latest quarter. Let's talk not only about this quarter, but about where the chip cycle is at more broadly here. Let's bring in Anand Srinivasan, an analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence, for more on all of this. Anand, thanks so much for jumping on the call this morning. Let's just start with how you guys are thinking about where we're at in this cycle, right? We had heard a lot about a chip shortage, about the inability for certain suppliers. The auto industry certainly had a chip problem. Where do you see the cycle as of today, and what has the most recent round of earnings told you guys?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you for having me on. Look, I mean, our view of the chip cycle is that this shortages and the demand spikes have been a long time coming. The chip industry has had historical patterns of excess demand and then excess supply. And as a result, there's been these wide swings. Even though the CAGR, or the compound annual growth rate in the industry, is somewhere in the mid-single digits, you've had these sine waves around that slope of the line that are excessive. And what the industry has done over time is to compress supply expansion and crimped the potential price swings that come along with the oversupply with the industry. And as a result, we think that this has led to more steadiness and dampened volatility in the semiconductor industry, and we think that is here to stay. As a result, when the chip shortage happens, we think this has been a long time coming, and all it's going to do is extend demand, and it's going to compress that sine wave. So we think demand patterns are going to probably have to stick around a little longer because supply isn't coming online anytime soon. So we think that it's going to be a more steadier demand pattern through the remainder of 21 and potentially into 22. So the translation of that into smaller semiconductor consuming industries, autos, industrials, communications, infrastructure, energy industries, all of that is going to see sort of demand sort of lower prioritized, and it's going to have to wait till 2022. And prices are going to have to go up, and that's probably going to readjust demand a little bit as well. The timing of it is a little odd, right? I mean, this is the seasonally strongest period of the quarter, but the problem is that because it's the seasonally strongest period for semiconductors, all of the demand is going to be prioritized for PCs and handsets, which occupy, give or take, about almost 70% of semiconductor consumption. So this is sort of a darned if you do, darned if you don't for the semiconductor industry. But in our view, it's going to extend out the demand patterns and extend out the sustainability of the semiconductor cycle.
That's really interesting, Anand. And I want to continue on that point for a moment. I know that you came on to talk about NVIDIA, but I want to pick up on that. And on the NVIDIA point, the CEO Jensen Huang said on the call, demand is going to outstrip supply for some time. So it's interesting because we were getting some early indications from the automakers that the shortage was abating. But now we hear from a Toyota, we hear from Ford, it's back, right? It's still having an effect on production, both of them cutting production. So it sounds like from what you're saying that that's going to continue to happen, or at the very least, we are going to see these waves for the lower priority industries for quite some time.
Yeah, so one of the things that's a good way of thinking about it, Julie, is capacity you don't turn on a switch in the semiconductor industry and then you don't have this flood of capacity. We're trying to expand capacity, but the semiconductor industry is also very cognizant of the fact that, look, not all of this demand may be real. Some of this may be double ordering from a panicked buyer, and as a result, they don't want to turn on too much supply and hurt their own profitability and pricing over the long term. So, there's some of that reticence from the semiconductor industry. On the flip side, from a demand perspective, there is a sustained high demand from PCs, from smartphones, from the data center, both from the cloud and the corporate IT buyer, which is seeing solid demand. And if you look at industrials, if you look at autos, and if you look at the other industries, they're smaller pieces of the pie. Autos, for all of the drama and the noise that it makes, is less than 10% of semiconductor consumption. So, and this is partly their own fault when they cut supply or cut production in 2020, right? So in all fairness, we just see this demand extending over a longer period of time, and we think higher prices are probably here to stay in the early part of 22 as well.
So just quickly then, Anand, let's bring it back to NVIDIA, right? All of this would seem to bode well for NVIDIA. Data center business, very strong for the company in the quarter. It's got the gaming business, the crypto business as well. Is that the only suspense here sort of over the mix going into the coming quarters?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, they've got both their engines firing, which is the gaming business, and a wider demographic of people are becoming gamers, particularly PC gamers. And NVIDIA is the leader of making systems to solve that particular demographics demand. The other part of it is AI, and AI, as we well know, is proliferating across a variety of workloads, both in the cloud as well as in corporate IT, and they make the best chips for both AI training and AI inference. And so both of those are long-term structural demand drivers, and that's going to drive demand for NVIDIA. The fact that you have these spiky patterns from a seasonal perspective, and as a result, you're going to get it in excess of supply from time to time, but in the long run, NVIDIA is a fantastic a clean structural growth story for multiple years to come, in our view.
All right, we'll leave it there. Anand Srinivasan, analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence. I appreciate the time this morning. We'll be in touch.